I am the president of the Friends of Gibson Museum, but also the president of the Lake County Historical Society. So history's in my blood. We're really excited to have you all here. Anyone, is this your first trip visiting the Gibson?
Yes.
All right, we have some first timers. Very good. Well, we were once the Middletown Library, and it was the Chauncey Gibson Library for about 80 years. And then when the county built the new library, senior center, community complex across the way, the Lake County Historical Society, as well as some very supportive people in our community who felt we needed a South County museum, established the Chauncey Gibson Museum and Cultural Center. So we've been open, we're going into our third year, but this past March, it was quite exciting for us that the County of Lake accepted the Gibson Museum into its family of museums. So now we join with the Lower Lake Schoolhouse Museum as well as the Courthouse Museum, and making a three-pronged effort to get Lake County aware of our magnificent history. We are thrilled to have for our fireside chat someone who wasn't around when Franklin Delano Roosevelt was around. But close! And it's Terry, and we're just thrilled to have him as being our speaker after he speaks. And I'm certain if you have any questions, he's more than happy to answer them. And we'll get started on our fireside chat.
Well,
thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to be standing and sitting. And I'll give you a little background on myself, because this Lake County is why it's so special to me. I was born in northern Minnesota, 1936. I'm an old man. And it was in a log cabin. Our nearest town, the nearest town was about 25 miles away. And there was no doctors, and our nearest doctor was about 50 miles away. And but we had a midwife that went around and helped. But anyway, when time for my mother to give birth, the midwife was sick, so my 12-year-old sister delivered me.
Oh, wow.
So I didn't think nothing of it. My mother didn't think nothing of it. So, and then we were raised out there, and my dad was, he was kind of a logger and stuff like this, but we were used to that. My mother was very interesting. She was born in Yugoslavia and came over here when she was a young girl, 2 or 3, 4 years old, I guess, and then her father died of tuberculosis right away, and then her mother got killed. And she was living in Grand Rapids, Minnesota, and a family adopted her, was a Gum family. Now you know who the Gum family was? Judy Garland's family. And so Judy Garland was a baby, and my mother used to babysit her. and then they moved away, and my mother got adopted by, moved in with another family. But up till, till right before Judy Garland died, my mother would get a Christmas card every year from Judy Garland, which my brother had stacked up in the corner somewhere, and I thought, God, it probably worth a ton of money. I don't know. So I've always liked wildlife and the woods and stuff like that. Actually, I'm an engineer by trade, electronics engineering communications. I went to Baylor in Waco, Texas. But still I still enjoy the backcountry. I started writing, and I was writing technical stuff for manuals, magazines, but I started writing up here in 1986 for the newspaper. And I remember when they actually had an ad come out, they wanted a writer, an outdoor writer, and so I went in, I said, I might give that a whirl, and the editor says to me, he said, okay, write me something, because there was about half a dozen people put in for it. So I wrote a story about catfish. And in the end, he said, okay, when can you start doing this? And I said, okay, right, anytime. So I started writing for them. And then now, since then, I've written for a number of magazines. I've written several stories for Bay Nature out of San Francisco. That's one of my favorite ones. And then Sports Afield and Outdoor Life and Western Outdoor News. I wrote for them for a staff writer for a number of years. And I still write for some of the magazines like Wilderness Unlimited. I write for them, and I write hunting and fishing stuff. But I write a lot about, my favorite writing is about the animals and the culture. And Lake County, I got to tell you, is perfect. I mean, when you look at Lake County, you've got the treasure of the world here in Clear Lake. Okay, when you look at this, oldest lake in the world, probably 2.2 million years. It's been argued back and forth at 500,000. And the scientists I've talked to and have done research on it, they figure it's well over 2 million years old, which is really something. And Mount Canocti, which overlooks the lake, which is a very special thing. And in Clear Lake, we know about the algae and all this stuff right now. There's an algae, form of algae in this lake right now called Limbia. It's the oldest living thing in the world.
Wow.
It goes back 2 billion years. It goes back when Earth was first formed. That algae has remained relatively unchanged. And it's common, it's in other areas too, but it's common in fairly common in Clear Lake. If you look at it, it's that long little stringy algae you see floating around and called Limbia. I think that's fascinating to just pick that up and look at it, you know, and stuff like this. So you want to remember too, this lake was here before man walked on Earth. There was nobody here when this lake was here thriving. The lake is actually itself, most lakes only last about 100,000 years at the most because they become silt and landmass. This lake is and this lake is unusual to scientists because it's such a shallow lake. It's only itself. It's mostly, you know, this lake doesn't build up with silt for the simple reason the lake is actually moving. The bottom is moving all the time. There's earthquakes out on this lake every day. They're so small you can't register them. But the lake itself tilts off and on, and so the silt can never build up in it. And it also has cracks open up in the lake. They've discovered those. And so this lake is, if you look at it, it's like a frying pan with two handles. The lake up towards the lakeport area is the big part of the frying pan, and then the two handles are the two arms that come up. And the lake itself, like I say, it's the first settlers to this lake were the Pomo Indians, and they got here. It varies who you talk to. 12 to 13,000 years ago is when they first settled here. But you look in time versus how old the lake is. That's a nothing. That's a speck. You know, it's of life in there. And like I say, and the lake itself, I've been out with crews that have done core drilling and looked at the bottom of the lake and stuff like this. And 2 years ago, I was out with the University of California team, and they core drilled down, and they went down to equivalently, and they can look at the silt coming up the core and actually age it. And they were down about 100,000 years equivalent, and they actually found hitch scales. So the hitch that you've heard about has been here for a very, very long time. The fish in the lake is, right now there's I believe it's 11 native fish in the lake, species I'm talking about, but about 22 non-native species. And one thing about this lake, a lot of people don't know, population-wise of all fish, and that includes all the fish in it, is the highest in the world per acre. More fish per acre in this lake than any place in the world, any other lake in the world, which is phenomenal when you look at it. So, I mean, wouldn't it be something to be able to swim the length of the lake along the bottom and see all this stuff? I mean, I have a camera that I put in the front of my boat, and an underwater camera, and I get so enthralled looking at this, I just go, wow. And you see everything on the bottom of this lake. Not only do you see old stuff fish, a friend of mine has a camera too. He lives in Clear Lake Oaks, R.C. Stevens, and he took his camera down off of past the Narrows 2 years ago and found a Model A Ford coupe with a rumble seat up and laying on the bottom full of silt, and don't know how long it had been there. And he's been back about 3 times to look at it. And somebody just drove. And you know, other things happening. We've had the droughts where the lake had shrunk big. Back in 1976, when we had the drought here, there was this group that at the Lakeside Park, County Park there, that ramp there went out, they found a car out there they saw, because the lake was down so low. They pulled it in, there was 2 skeletons in it. And there were two Hispanic guys that had been missing for years and years, and they didn't even know where they were. And apparently they'd been drinking because they found beer cans and stuff in the car, and it had floated out. They backed it in the lake somewhere and it floated out and sunk. And they've been missing for like 15, 20 years. And so there's all kinds of stuff. I saw with my camera, I was off the library park in Lakeport, about 2.5 miles out there, and with my camera out there, and I found a refrigerator. How an refrigerator got out there, I have no idea. I mean, somebody took it out. And I get a kick going around the lake with a camera, all the lakes along Lakeshore Boulevard, all the houses there. I can tell who partied because I get in front of a dock, there's all kinds of beer cans and wine bottles, and then nothing, wine beer cans. So you know which party they're having a party at. But anyway, but the lake itself is so unique, and the wildlife here, and the bird life is one of the richest bird lives anywhere in the country is here. We have all kinds of, you know, and you've all seen the pelicans, I'm sure out there, and that's one of my favorite birds. You look at them and they're in a, you know, they get in that long line when they fly, and they all mimic each other. And then the western grebe, which is the one that runs across the water. No, I'm doing a story for a magazine on western grebe. I've never seen one fly. Nobody ever seen one fly. So I talked to a professor at the University of Washington who got her PhD on western grebes. And I said, I've never seen one fly because they're a migrating bird. She says, well, they walk. And I said, oh, they do not. She said, well, you ever seen one fly? And I said, no. And she was kidding me. She was giving me a bad time. But they actually fly at night. And they do migrate all the way down from northern, you know, up in Oregon and Washington and that area. And to me, they're one of my favorite birds because they're such a fascinating bird. Now, here's something on the western grebe, because you've all seen them, and I like to talk about animals. The little ones, the way they get on the mother's back, and I've watched them do it, because I've been out with the scientists and stuff, they put their foot up like this, and they step on it and get on her back. That's isn't that neat? I think that's so nice. And what she does is, when they're in the nest, she talks to their eggs and chirps, and they home in on that, they imprint on it, because then when they're born, and she's out there, and I've often wondered about that, so I asked the scientist, and I said, okay, you got, all these grebes are together with little ones, and they're diving, and how do they find their mother? Well, when they come back up, she starts calling, and each call is slightly different from each mother, and that little one homes in on her, and that's how she gets to it. And I think that is so unique, because in animal life, things really happen that's different that we can't explain, you know, and stuff like this. And one of my other favorite birds is the osprey, of course. And the osprey now, actually, you've seen it. I'm sure we've seen pictures of it, or you've seen it. I've seen it myself. Pick up fish and fly off with it. They actually on their back, they've got their talons are like this, and they got a back one here. It's got a barb in it. That actually is like a fish hook on the fish. It holds it, and they always turn it when they grab it. They turn it so it's head first, so they can fly aerodynamically. Otherwise, they couldn't move. You know, they couldn't take that big 2 or 3 pound bass, and they'll fly to the tree and feed. And one place I always tell people, if you want to see an osprey, and you see it right now, is you go to the state park, Clear Lake State Park, and you first go in there. Right where the center is, visitor center, and you look up there, there's a pole up there, and she's got babies right now, and they all sit down, and she's feeding them. You can actually watch her feed them up there. And that's kind of neat that they have that. And they also have here, of course, I guess if you look at favorite birds on Lake County, I like the golden eagle, because they're big and mean, not because I'm big and mean or anything, but they are the ultimate. And a friend of mine, Jack Booth, out of Ukiah, this last year, he was up at Cow Mountain in Lake County during the Audubon bird count last year. He took a series of photos, and he's a biologist, so he understands, he's a wildlife biologist. This golden eagle attacked a deer, and he got a series of pictures, and he sent them, it must be a dozen pictures. Because he was taking a picture, and all of a sudden he saw it dive, and there was this buck laying there, a little spiked buck, and a deer, he'd come down and it grabbed it by a buck, right? And you see it grab it, you could actually see the sequence. And the buck stood up, and of course, it didn't hurt the buck, and he didn't duck right at all. But they've been known to kill fawns, actually.
Kill what?
Kill fawns. Golden eagle will
Yes,
kill
I would
fawns.
imagine,
And stuff.
And lambs.
And lambs, yes. So there, you know, you look at this, and you look at all our wildlife, like I say, Clear Lake and itself, to me, but even though as much as I love Clear Lake, and I spend hours out on that lake just looking at things, because I like the river otters, you know, we have river otters. Otters, how do you think they got to Clear Lake? I can tell you exactly how they got to Clear Lake. They came up Cache Creek. And, because they're common down in the Delta. And they migrated up, and now there's beavers being seen in Clear Lake too. We never had beavers before, way back there. Now they're seeing them down in Cache Creek. A guy called me, I went down to his house. He lives on the creek, and he couldn't figure out what was gnawing the trees. And it was a beaver. They chewed them all the way around, and that they fall, the trees fall and stuff like that. And then I saw a beaver later on there. So they're coming up. So we're getting, and the wildlife on here now is completely changed in the sense that before they were always up in the woods, now they're coming into housing areas around the country, around the county. We had just, I don't know if you read about last week, that mountain lion was at the fairgrounds.
Yes.
You walked right by the kids play, where the kids play baseball there. There was nobody playing there, but it was a young lion, about 60 pounds. And then I can remember, because I did the story on it, 7, 8 years ago, something like this. At 9 o'clock on a weekday morning at Kmart parking lot, a mountain lion walked right across the parking lot with all those people there. And they went up over the end of and everybody went crazy, and it was a big lion. And then and last year, a friend of mine, Richard Pounds, he guides on the lake, fishing guide, and he was telling me he was at the state park because he was going to pick his clients up there, and he's sitting in his truck waiting. A mountain lion came down to the parking lot at the boat ramp and sniffed all 4 tires and then walked away. And he stood there looking at it. So I mean, it's just part of our whole culture. And then a woman called me last year too. They have at the Narrows, there's a place called Shag Rock, it sticks up there. And a mountain lion was sleeping up there. And last summer, the funniest story was that this guy was fishing. He doesn't from around here, but he called me about it. He was fishing a bass tournament actually, and it was about 105 out. It was just hot as all get out. And he's fishing along the shoreline there at Henderson Point, and he heard this noise, this cry, and a bear come running down, and he was right there and jumped out in the lake and rolled over on its back and went, and then stayed there for about 5 minutes and then swam ashore and went back up the hill. I mean, so where else do you get to see it? And then of course, we had the bear last year walk through the mobile home park at 1800 and 1900 right there downtown in Lakeport, and walked, must have been a dozen people saw it. It just meandered right through the middle of the day, right down through the mobile homes there, and just disappeared. So we are seeing it definitely. And then a guy called me that lives in Lakeport about 4 or 5 months ago, and he heard this scream about 9 o'clock at night. He couldn't figure out what it was. And he went out in his backyard, flipped the light on. He had a dog out there in the backyard. And he had a little woven fence around the yard to keep the dog in. And the dog head was stuck through the fence, and he ran around the other side, and a coyote had the dog by the nose and wouldn't let go. And that was a dog screaming. So he threw rocks at the coyote. Finally, the coyote let go and ran up the hill. So I mean, and then we had, and then a woman that she called me here last year. She lives on the top houses up by Nice up there, and her husband's a captain and a merchant and a mariner. He commercial ships, and he's gone a lot. She's there alone. Well, she got a real beautiful home with a swimming pool and everything. She was getting up in the morning and opened the door, and there was a mountain lion kept sleeping by the pool all the time. And she was afraid to let her dogs out. So you think, things. And then right near where I live, just down Martin Street there out in the country, there was this, I remember 7, 8 years ago, so a woman lived there. She was in her late 80s by herself. And she was sitting there during the day on her back porch, it's got a fence around it, reading a magazine. She had a little poodle over there, and a mountain lion right in front of her jumped the railing, grabbed the poodle, went over the side, and they never saw the dog again. And then another funny story about animal life was there's a place called Yawana Camp. It's on Scotts Creek Road there, and they had a daycare center a number of years ago, and so they had kids there, and the mountain lion was hanging around there, and they were worried about this lion being around the kids, so they actually got the lion killed a deer, and was still right there and left it, and so they went. They got a depredation permit from the Department of Fish and Game to kill the lion if they wanted it. So these two guys, neighbors, and said, well, we'll go kill a lion. So they sat up they had beams, strong flashlights and everything, but they sat up above the carcass of the deer and during the night. So about midnight, the one guy said, well, I got to go to work in the morning. He says, I'm going to leave. And the guy said, well, I'll stay here. The guy fell asleep.
No.
He woke up, the deer was gone. So the lion had come and drugged the deer off. So I mean, he did. So like I say, Lake County has got just oodles of birds. And I always tell a story about myself. When I came up here with my late wife, we were camping one time in the Mendocino National Forest up by near Elk Mountain, and I had a pickup truck, and she was always afraid of bears, and even though I've been raised in the woods, and she's always, oh, bears are going to attack us, bears. I said, no, they aren't going to hurt you. Well, anyway, we were sleeping in the bed of the pickup, and there was no camper shell on there or anything. And during the night, I had an ice chest with stuff. I heard a big crash, and the ice chest fell over, and I woke up, and there was a big black head looking down at me like this. And I let out a scream, and she let out a scream, and it went, moo. It was an Angus cow. So there was range cattle up there in those days. There was no bear.
I guess so.
And she said, it was like 2 o'clock in the morning, and I thought, I'll just go back, and she said, we're getting out of here right now. So we had to pack up in the middle of the night and go home. But no, you look at, like I say, that's what fascinates me. I think when you go out on the lake, to enjoy the lake for what it is, because when I stop and think, I give talks sometimes at the Indian Beach Resort down there over at Glenhaven, and I get, one of the things I do is, these are almost all non-resident here, they're staying there, and they come, and they have a barbecue and everything. I make everybody get down on the dock when we start this. And I said, kneel down, put your hand in the water, and shake it, and they all do, and I said, okay, you just put your hand in a lake that's 2.2 million years old, long before man was on the earth, and they just go crazy, they can't believe that. And it is, that's why it's special. This is why we want to protect this lake. And I know you've heard a lot about the algae stuff and everything. Actually, studies have shown the algae have been here for a million years. And they'll probably be here another million years, long after we're gone. And, you know, and I can remember we've had all kinds of things go on this lake about getting rid of the algae. We had this one guy, he ran for supervisor, in fact. He was going to dredge the lake. And he was going to dredge it to 150 feet. They had a big meeting, I can remember, at the Lakeport City Council, and they brought in some scientists that were experts on dredging, and he had made his field, his group. I think they were called Friends of Clear Lake or whatever it was. Anyway, they said, well, the scientists got up and they said, okay, these were experts at dredging. They said, if you dredge this lake to 100 to 150 feet, the stuff you take out will be higher than Mount Canocti. And you're going to have to bus it out of here. I mean, truck it out of here, and you got to take it to Nevada because nobody in California will allow it. And he said it'd take over 50 years of a trucks going 24 hours a day to haul all that stuff out of here. And this guy jumped up and he said, well, look at the employment we'll have. Which I thought was kind of neat. But you know, not people. And then we had another guy come here, and I remember I was at a meeting with him. He claimed he was a physicist, and he was going to get rid of the algae by hiring airplanes, and they almost hired him to do it, to spray a chemical on the lake at the time to kill the algae. And at that time, he even opened an office in Kelseyville. I can remember that. Well, then they found out in the end, and they did, at that time, they were actually going to have him draw up a plan first, the supervisor, and a good thing it all went through the window because they found out he was not a physicist anyway. He just came here and he started the thing. And of course, you've all heard, I'm sure, I know Boris had heard these stories many times. You remember they were going to do the tramway up Mount Canocti. And they were going to have stop and think of what that would entail. And it was going to have a restaurant up there, if I remember right. And that'd be a long ride. And he was looking for, the individual was looking for people to invest like $10,000 or something like this to it. And of course, that went out the window too. But the bottom line is, you know, you look at the the lake and the mountain. I myself don't want to ever see it changed. I want to see it protected. And Greg Juicy is a good friend of mine, and he's a scientist with the University of California, and he just retired, in fact, but he knows more about the scientist part of lake hunting than just about anybody. And like he said, his studies show, I was at a talk with him here a couple of weeks ago at our Fish and Wildlife Advisory Committee, that Clear Lake is actually clearer now than it was 50 years ago, 100 years ago, he said, because in originally, when you look at, even back in the 50s and 60s, when I first came here, there were very few weeds out here then. The algae was so thick the sun couldn't penetrate to make weeds grow, and the sun has to penetrate to hit the bottom down there, and so when the lake is very cloudy, there's nothing, you won't see weeds. In those days, like Juicy said, it was mostly just Thule shoreline. There was no outside weeds on the lake. I can remember people water skiing, and some of the old timers here, as you go down the middle of the lake, there'd be a green wake all over, and the people would come out, they had green all over them and everything else. And that's how times have changed. And now it's relative, you know, he said the lake is getting clearer all the time for that, you know, for whatever reason. They don't really know for sure why, but it's part of the cycle of this lake that goes through up and down. And so we just have to more or less accept, but we don't want pollution in the lake, obviously. We want to protect the lake, but we don't want to change the character of the lake. And that's what but my favorite thing is every night, I do it probably 5 nights a week, I go down to Library Park and sit there just before dark and look at Canocti and the lake. And I'm falling in love. Mount Canocti, I've been up many times, is the mystery itself. And this good friend of mine, and he gave talks when he passed away, about 8 months ago. He was one of the scientists that went into caves about with Zawalski at that time in 1991, 92, 93. And he tells stories about the mountain up there, and he studied the mountain to death, you know. And a couple of facts, and I've been up the mountain many times, never like him. There's 7 caverns in the mountain, and that the Ames Research and NASA teamed up to do studies of the mountain on it. They actually, and they know where the caverns are. They haven't gone into all of them, but he went into one of them. One he talks about it, they took a jackhammer to get in, they knew where it was at. And it took 2 weeks to make the hole big enough to get in. And they climbed, and he was the first guy in, and he hauled in lights, and had a generator out there. He got in there, and it was pitch dark, of course, and he yelled at him to turn on the lights, and he started the generator. He said it was like a massive gymnasium in there. He said it was just unreal. He said it was high ceilings, and in the middle of it was a vent with hot air coming up. And it was one of the caverns in the mountain. And it was just, he said it was crazy in there. And then part of that research, he said they lowered a rope 1,000 feet down there and never hit the bottom. Never hit any water or anything down there. But they would take and they did like a flare with to produce smoke, you know, smoke bomb. They mounted it over the vent. Certain times of the day, the smoke would go up, other times it would go down, and they don't know why that was. It was that varying back and forth with that vent on there. And then one of the other vents, they went, because in the early settlers actually, you know, back in the 30s, 40s, and even back when the Napoleon was here, there was ways to get in the caverns, some of the caverns and they did go in some of them. They went into one cavern they dug in, and they lit it up and everything, and there was a guy that I used to know, some of you may know him, lived in, his name was Leroy Thomas. He lived just outside of Lake Fort there. And they looked at it, and there was his name, and it said 1934 on it. He'd been in there. But they found other initials in there too, of people. And so that was, and of course, Indian lore was that they'd throw sticks, painted sticks on them, and they'd pop up in Clear Lake. We've all heard that. And one of the things the research, he was telling me about what the researchers found out there, because to this day, the Indians, they still consider a sacred mountain, and at night you get off the mountain because there's evil spirits at night on it. Even today's Pomos go up there after dark. And so so one of the things they did is they would bring in part of the research, which was kind of neat, that they bring in Indian elders because the Pomos have a very accurate oral history, and they can repeat back, you know, all the way back. And they brought in this one, and I think he just passed away. His name was Jones, 90-some years old. He was with the Big Valley tribe, and I'd met him a couple times, but anyway, he gave a story that had passed down that, and it's just a story. You gotta remember, a lot of myth and stuff like this, but that's what makes it fun. That these 4 Indians were hunting up there, deer hunting, and they ran out of water, and their canteens were empty and stuff, and it was getting dark, and they couldn't go down off, they knew they'd be on the mountain at dark, so they were scared. And so they went into a little enclave to spend the night, and they fell asleep. They woke up in the morning, their rifles were gone, and their canteens full. And that's just a fun story, but I mean, I love stories like that. You know, that's the Indian myths, you know, and stuff like this. And so the evil spirits visit them. This guy here, Ed Groves, his name was, he had an idea. All this stuff he just loved. He took it, he's going to spend the night up there. And everybody said, what? He said, I want to spend the night here. So he got a sleeping bag, and it was a cloudy night, it was dark, and he climbed in a little rock enclave because this crew that worked on the research would come off the mountain at night. And he laid there like this, and the wind came up right after it got dark. And it went in and out of that rock crevice. He said, I slept 5 minutes, and I said, I'd never do that again. He said, I know there were people there. He said, and so the funny story is we were doing a radio show together, and he told this story, and it was a call-in show, KST, the local radio station, and all these people, a number of people call in and say about the aliens on the mountain. You know, there's aliens up there that live up there. They kept saying, we said, no, but the one guy said, I have lunch with the aliens twice a month on Mount Canocti, and I'd like to invite you guys to come with me. You know, so, but no, the mountain itself, you know, I look at, actually, if you look at the research on it, and I've done quite a bit on it, the mountain is porous, and no water runs off it. And during part of the Zawalski's research group, I guess, what they did was, they picked the rainiest day of the year, a couple rainy days of the year, and they sent crews around the base of the mountain. Rain was just pouring down, no water came off the mountain. It just porous, goes right down in the mountain. When they got down below, it was flooding down below from just the rainfall. That showed, and that's where the theory come out, and the scientists believe it, that there's a hidden lake under the mountain, and it's very large. And because the ancient Indians said they'd actually seen the lake, and according to Indian mythology, it's sightless fish live in there in the lake, which possibly could happen, you know, stuff like this. But I don't want to ever see none of these mysteries solved, because that's the fun of Mount Canocti and our draw to the tourists, that you look at that mountain, there's things going on and we'll never ever know about it, you know, and stuff. And I remember I did a hike up there a couple of years ago. I've hiked to the top many times, and with my grandson, and this husband and wife doctors from India were here, and they were working out of San Jose, and they were here for a short time. They'd heard about the mountain and the lake, and they followed us up the mountain. There was a bunch of people hiking up. We got up there, and they said, okay, and then we got talking to them, and they said, well, right behind you as we're going up the mountain, because it's a road that you can walk up. They said, this great big animal walked 10 yards behind you across the, I thought it was a deer, because you do see deer there. And I said, what did it look like? And they said it was about this high and had a great big long tail. It was a mountain lion. And so we came back down, and they walked with us, and we got to the area, and they said, right here, and they're in the dust with these big mountain lion tracks that we walked across, you know, and stuff. So it's a very, very neat area up there that I'm hoping, and I'm working hard myself to try and get the buses back up, because we had buses go up there, and when the buses ran, it took 2 weeks to get on them. They were so popular to get a reservation. When the county had a lawsuit with the Fowlers. See, what happened was the county now owns the top of the mountain. It's a county park. They bought it from the Fowlers, the Fowler family. Not Kathy Fowler, it's a different Fowler family that lived up there. Okay, they owned it forever practically, but they got a little miserable contest with them about this short access road. You go into the property and back out again, and they sued, and the county won the lawsuit. So now the county has access back up there again, and the buses could run, but the county doesn't want to open the buses up again. And I think we need to do that, because the visitors that come to Lake County tourist stuff a lot of them are older retired people, and they've got the money. It's people who are retired that have the money. They can do things like it. And one of the great things would be for them to get on a bus, because the view from the mountain is absolutely astronomical. And you can see Mount Shasta, you can see the Sacramento Valley and everything. And my biggest fun that I do, because I always have this vivid imagination stuff, is I visit Mary Dowden's cabin. Mary Dowden's cabin from partway up the mountain. I think it was 1877 she lived there by, her husband had died, and she lived there by herself. Can you imagine a woman in the 1800s living by herself up there? And her daughter and her son-in-law lived in Lakeport. And every day, because there was no cars, every day at 2 p.m. on a sunny day, she'd take a mirror and flash it. And they would respond back. If they saw it, and they'd respond back. And they knew she was okay. If they didn't see the flash, they'd wait another day. And they didn't see a flash, then they'd go by horseback up there and see if she was okay. And she always was. She ended up, she died up there, in fact, and she's buried up there. But you can, the cabin is actually more of a house than a cabin. It's still there. It's a county owns it. They got a fence around it. You can't go in it, but you can go there and walk around, and you can actually walk down to where she stood and look down at Lakeport. And part of that by here is what they call mall oaks. Mall oaks, some of those oaks are 500 years old there. And they call mall oaks because in the ancient days they made mall handles on them because they're so strong. And there's a grove of them up there, and it's neat to look at that and stuff. Can you imagine standing by an oak tree that's 500 years old? I mean, that takes your breath away, you know, when you look at that. And so, but it's all, what's good now, it's all county-owned, county park, and it's really a valuable part of it. But that's part of what we need the buses to get up there, because I can tell you from hiking up there a number of times, actually the hike down is harder than the hike up. Because your feet are going in that gravel all the way down. But if you take your time up, but the county doesn't want to get involved in it again. That's what they told me, really. They said, we don't really, and I said, well, why don't you open it up to an entrepreneur, you know? Well, then we got to get into bidding war and all this type of thing. And I heard 14 reasons why they couldn't do it. And I think we need to do that, again, to get people to go up there, and it'll help a couple of things. One, will help preserve the mountains, and I can tell you, the other thing is, if you ever hike up there and you take your dog, there's rattlesnakes everywhere up there. They're not on the road, but there's one guy was telling me, just last year, they had prisoners up there cleaning the roads up and everything. And he told me, he said, now none of you guys, because they have to take a pee, you know, he said, none of you guys step off the road because there's rattlesnakes here. All of a sudden you heard this scream and this guy's yelling, and he ran over and this guy stepped off the road to take a pee. And there was a rattlesnake coiled right between his legs. He got the snake out, they didn't get bit or anything, but that made everybody convinced not to do that again. So, you know, so that's just part of it. But we got other areas. Like my favorite person of this Lake County is, and I don't know if you know her, but in fact, we'll pass a picture on her. Frances Rupert, okay? As you go up Martin Springs Road, into the old Martin area, Martin Springs area, there's Rupert Ridge. And years ago, I hunted on it. I could figure, you know, everybody gets a name of things, you know. And it was named after her. In the 1800s, she lived there. She came from Germany. And he passes around. This is a picture of her. And I did a story for a magazine for her on her and stuff. And she didn't like people. And so they built a house for her up there, and she lived alone on Rupert Ridge. It's near what they call Pinnacle Rock. It's a little ways from there, on the Martin Springs Road. And she wouldn't come to town. People had always kind of mistreated her. And she had chickens and a couple cows, and she used to provide milk and eggs to the Bartlett's. That's when Bartlett Springs had 5,000 people down there in her resorts, up to 5,000. And she had a horse, her team was made up of a horse and a cow. And they pulled the wagon down into Bartlett Springs for her. And she had a dog that was as mean as she was, they said. They were going to get a fur like her. So anyway, at that time, there was a fighter, and all of us old timers remember this, gentleman Jim Corbett. Jim Corbett, he fought John L. Sullivan, he was a world famous fighter. He trained at Bartlett Springs. And so he took, and he's the only man that had ever been nice to her and talked to her nice, and she fell in love with him. Of course, he didn't fall in love with her, but he took me nice. She named him Gentleman Jim Corbett. And that name stuck around the world on it, that Gentleman Jim Corbett. So, I mean, she made one trip to Lakeport her whole time. She was one of the miserable people she'd ever seen. She never came back. So, but you know, you look at just stuff like that, which makes really Lake County. And then I did a story a number of years ago on an elderly lady that lived here called Kathy Richardson, Katie Richardson. She was born in Lakeport. She lived to be 107. And when I interviewed her for the magazine, I did a series of stories on her, she was like 103, 104 then. And she was so sharp mentally, it was unbelievable. She was in the first graduating class out of Clear Lake High School, out of Lakeport to Clear Lake High School. And I think she said there was 21 kids in the class, and she named every one of them for me. And stuff. And on her 100th birthday, she rode a motorcycle down Main Street at Lakeport. She was really well liked. I mean, stuff. She had a great personality, and she was. And I remember one time she lived in Lakeport with her daughter and her son-in-law, and I was going to go out and finish up an interview with her. Like I say, she was 103 or 104 then. And she called me and she said, "You can't come tonight because Thursday night is my beer and pizza night." So she was such a neat lady. And her husband, I believe her father was the first guy killed in a car wreck in Lake County. And it was during World War I. And they were having a bond drive for war bonds. And they were landing on a big valley. They brought in a biplane. And if you paid so much, you got a free ride in the plane. And so there was only like 2 or 3 cars, 4 cars in the whole county that most people had horse and buggy. So the sheriff asked her dad if he'd help him direct traffic, you know, with a horse and buggy, I guess. And so this one lawyer had a big roadster in Lakeport. He came out and her dad had his hand up to stop me, ran over the top and killed him. Oh. And her answer was to me, she told me the story, and she's still mad about it. She said, "You know why he got away with it? Because he's a damn lawyer." She told me. But she was such a neat lady and stuff like this. And she told about, which was really nice. Her dad would haul merchandise from Hopland to the stores in Lakeport, and they went down the old toll road at Highland Springs, and she used to ride with him as a little girl. And then they also brought, that was also the stagecoach for the visitors to Bartlett Springs, and she told about that. And she said they'd come in, and then they leave San Francisco, take the ferry, and then take a railroad up to Hopland. There was a train those days, and then they would take and go by stagecoach to Lakeport area here, and then they took a boat across, and another stagecoach would pick them up and take them into Bartlett Springs. And it was like a 2-day trip for them to do that. And her job was, her dad drove the stagecoach for a while from the lake to Bartlett Springs. Her job was to put the stool out for the ladies with the long skirts so they wouldn't get dusty and stuff like that. So as a little girl, she did this. And so she was fun to listen to because she was so vivid memory of what it was like. And Bartlett Springs was really a huge thing here for us. I mean, it was, Highland Springs was actually, you know, there was a resort there at one time before the lake ever was there. And actually on Highland Springs Road, I've been down it many times, but I sometimes just drive down at the old toll road, they call it, to go into Hopland. Black Bart lived in Ukiah at one time, the famous stagecoach driver, and he actually had made a couple of holdups on the Highland Springs Road, and held up the stages. So I mean, it's got tremendous history when you look at that whole thing. I mean, to talk to a person who's actually done it all is just fascinating to me and stuff. And in fact, just the other day, there was a guy named Don Hendricks rather. He was in a group of people who were out there to have a meeting, and I think it was last week, it was his 75th, he was born in Lakeport, Lake County, his 75th high school reunion here. And he only had 2 people left, him and one other. And you look at, and I don't know, some of you people know Jerry Hendricks, he was a school teacher years ago. And his story about how he lost his arm up deer hunting at Cow Mountain just fascinated me. They were on horseback, and he told me the story himself. And he stopped up there, and they were taking the gun out of the scabbard, and the gun went off and shot him in the arm and blew his arm apart. And he's laying there, and so somebody else jumped on a horse and they went down to, we had a doctor here called Dr. Craig, and everybody knew him. He was the old timer, and he got on a horse and rode up there and fixed Jerry up. And then they had to cut the arm off. I don't know if they cut the arm off up there or not, but he was, and rode back down with them all on horseback. And so you look at that. And I remember one here, a few years ago, my wife at the time was in the doctor's office, and Dr. Craig's nurse was in there. She was like 94, 95 years old. And she was a former nurse, and she was talking about what it was like when she worked for him. She was only in her 20s. She said, to get an appendix taken out, including the hospital fee in Lakeport, was $15. That was the whole thing. And a doctor's visit was $1 with him, if you could afford it. If you couldn't, he'd say, that's okay, forget it. Boy, how times have changed. You look at, and so that, and Craig was famous here for Lake County, for the doctor at the time, and he made house calls and did all kinds of things. And then, another guy I met here, a few months ago down at Library Park, he was an elderly guy. He was born on Glenrock Ranch over here. And his favorite story was his dad was a drinking hellraiser and stuff like this, and they went to Haven Springs, and he'd go with them, his dad, and this guy, they were there one night, one afternoon or whatever, and this guy was using every foul letter in the word, drinking and yelling, and his dad said, that's it. He goes over and he said, one more word out of you, he told me, I'm gonna knock you on your egg, and came over, and the guy came over and said, I'm sorry, he said, I've been drinking too much. I made a fool of myself, let me buy you a drink. He said, my name is Frank Sinatra. That's who it was. And he used to frequent the places here.
So we want to leave some time for questions,
Okay.
if anyone has any questions, or.
Is there any ongoing research on Mountain Archive?
Do what?
Any ongoing research?
No, it stopped with Zawalski, and he passed away now, and he did it, and I'm surprised that they're not really doing any real research on it. It's the mountain, in fact, when it first erupted, was about 100,000 years ago, and it actually blew ash, and they found ash in New York from it. But after that, the eruptions were like you squeezed a tube of toothpaste and it came out over the side. And can you imagine, okay, you've all been to State Park, and you know when you drive down that road there, those big rocks on the right-hand side, that came off the mountain originally during the volcano. And wouldn't that have been a sight when that happened? It probably all happened within a period of a few days, it tumbled down there.
I hiked up to Mount Kanaka
Mhm.
from the Watson Ranch where the Quicksilver Mine.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Up to the saddle, then went over to the east side where the tower's at. And there's a big crevice in there.
Yeah.
And after hiking about 4 or 5 hours up there, I got up on top, and on a post it said, keep out.
I love it. Oh my God.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, you said the mountain is so porous that water doesn't run off. Is that a combination of the fact that it's a volcano and there are?
Yes, it is.
It's
And-
not the bedrock?
No, it's a volcano, and it's actually mostly it's rock. The mountain is, it's like gravel almost underneath. And so it's
One more, the buses you talked about, did they go all the way to the top?
the what?
The buses.
The buses went up to Wright's Peak, where it went to, and that's where the lookout station is. And it would go up there, and then people could climb the lookout station, and they could see forever, and then come down. It's a great view, I gotta tell you, because I've been to all the peaks, and you see all of Clear Lake out there. I mean, it's breathtaking on it, and it's something I really
There's
recommend
hardly
doing.
any deer on Canoctown.
I've seen deer all the way to Rice Peak. In fact, I walked around Rice Peak and saw deer tracks in the dust there. Not a lot of deer, no, not a lot of food.
Aren't they staffing the observation tower for
Yeah,
fire?
But
Aren't they staffing that
They
observation
did
tower?
this year, they
now?
did it last year, but they're doing it this year.
And
they
so do
would have
people
been
just, use their own cars to get up there? to-
They can drive up there,
The
like
volunteers?
maintenance people, like see the cell towers are up on the Buckingham and the other peak, and they can actually, they can use they allow them to drive up through the lock gate, maintenance vehicles and stuff like that.
And you can volunteer to be an owl.
Yeah, you can
Yeah,
volunteer
that's
to
what I
do
was
one,
reading,
yeah.
that sounds kind
Yeah.
of cool.
You talked about the otters coming up Cache Creek, but I remember hearing at one point that Clear Lake exited out towards the Russian River. Is that
Originally,
correct?
Clear Lake drained into the Russian River till, then we had the landslide at Blue Lakes that shut it off.
When was that?
That was about, I think it was like about 250,000 years ago. And that shut it off, and then it came the other way then.
You don't remember that?
No, originally it did. Originally it did.
Well, I've seen otter and beaver in Anderson Creek.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But you got, you know, you
Yes.
stop and think, like I say, you stop and think of this lake. People don't understand that this lake is 2 million years old. I mean, and it's also the largest freshwater lake within the state of California. And, but still, to have a lake this old, I attended one time real quick, like, they had here a meeting of lake bed management. It wasn't the county lake bed management. I remember I was invited, it was at Canoctown Harbor. And scientists from around the world came to that meeting. And I was surprised how much they'd studied Clear Lake, these individuals. They were just enthralled with, they said, my God, what a lake this is to study, you know, for, when you're looking back at ancient times.
Do you swim in the lake, like right now in the summer?
Not at my age, I don't, but I have swum.
Well, you have.
Yeah,
Yeah.
actually, the
I
water
mean,
is,
I just went swimming in the lake last week, so
Yeah.
I'm just wondering.
no, it's actually, we have not had any evidence or any cases of people getting sick from swimming in the lake that I'm aware of. I talked to Dr. Tate, and so, and they may have, the animals, they don't want the animals, like their dog, because they lick themselves, they get
And
them
they
off.
drink the water.
Well, not so much they get licking their fur like animals do, and then they get sick from the green. Actually, the algae, this is not algae, what you're seeing out there, that's called cyanobacteria.
The
It's
split
not
pea
algae.
stuff? The split
No,
pea
there's
stuff.
algae there,
Oh,
but there's
it's
not algae.
cyanobacteria.
Did you know this? Here's a fact about algae. We do have algae in the lake, obviously, and
Yeah.
stuff. Without, it produces 70% of the world's oxygen, algae does. Without algae, there'd be no life on Earth. Because that's what the algae, and the algae actually, what happens is, it's a plant, algae itself is a plant, and it produces oxygen. And like I say, in nighttime it sinks to the bottom, daytime it comes to the top. And that's what,
You had said that now the lake is cleaner than it's been.
now cleaner
in a
overall.
long
And, yeah, what
time.
they do is this, I'm sorry, go ahead.
To finish this sentence though, asking, but did it smell in the earlier years?
Yes.
Also, because I
Yes.
don't remember it
Yes.
being stinky in the
What they do is
50s.
vector control does tests every year, 4 or 5 times a year, and they use what they call a Secchi disc. And it's a round disc like this, and they use it everywhere, and it's got black marks on it, and on the cord going down is feet, inches of feet. Actually, it's in meters. But they lower it, and then they log that, and they've done it for 30 years here on Clear Lake at least. And the Secchi disc originally back 35 years ago when they first started, was only like a foot or two down, and now they're seeing 7 to 8, 10 feet down in places. So the lake is definitely getting clearer.
Yeah, well, no, like, I just wondered, it smells still.
Yeah,
but
no, it
didn't-
smelled then too. It's,
Yeah.
but it's,
These kids don't care.
You didn't mention the mink on the lake.
We do have mink on the lake, absolutely, and
I'll tell you my story
Okay.
about Big, very quickly. We were out on the lake and looking at a distance, we see this long animal and we're going, what in the world is that little guy going along? And I grabbed the binoculars, and there were several mink in a row.
Okay,
and
yeah.
Going along together. And so it looked like this. And we're going, we've never seen anything like this before.
Well, there was a mink that lived at Library Park by the boat ramp in the rocks. We'd see him all the time there. He'd come up and go back in the rocks, come out. Yeah, so no, there's not a lot of mink here, but there are mink in the lake. Like I say, and there's otters and stuff like that. And like I say, the bird life to me is unbelievable on this lake. It's second to none anywhere. I mean, and the reason for that is this: there's so much food for the birds. Most of these are fish-eating birds that you see out there. And a quick story about pelicans, which is one of my favorite birds. It was last year, I drove down to the county park. I always go down. I always bum around these places looking, with binoculars. And there was nobody in the park. It was late in the afternoon, it was a weekday, and as I drove in, I saw all these pelicans on the ramp. I thought, wow. So I snuck along the fence there on the right-hand side and got close. And these pelicans, this shows you how intelligent they were. There was pelicans standing up on the ramp in the water about this deep on their feet. Other pelicans were driving fish to them. And these pelicans were scooping it up. And after a little bit, they swapped places. Now, how did they know to do that? They went around and the pelicans that were eating now started driving and the others started eating.
It's like hunters and gatherers.
I said, yeah. I said, how do they know that? How do they know to do that? And it was just, I watched them for probably an hour.
Harbor seals do that too. The harbor seals, they'll do that.
Yeah, no, so animals are much smarter than we think they are. It's
I always say, if somebody calls you a bird brain, thank them for it.
Thank them for that, no. And one quick thing too, which I find interesting for a while. I did a story for how long animals and people live. Okay, the longest animal, I just did this here 6 months ago. The longest any animal has ever lived that they know of, they found a mussel. And they aged it at 504 years it lived. And they actually killed it aging it. Because they cracked it open and they got a lot of crystals when the mussel died. And the scientists got a lot of crystals. They found a blue shark that's 465 years old. And so there's a lot of animals that live longer than we do. The oldest human that we know of now was a woman in Italy. She lived to be 124 years and 11 months. And that's old. But there's a man in Indonesia that they're this close now to verifying it. That just this year, they're going back to authenticate his age. He's 148, they claim.
Wow.
And he's in a home, and they're feeding him. He said, I want to die. I'm not going to live too long. But when you stop and think of that, that's massive, and this mussel living 504 years, I mean, it is amazing, But actually, when you look at it, if you go back 100,000 years ago, I did some stories, research on that, the average person only lived to be 25. Women had kids at the age of 12. Because see, there was no medicine of any kind, you get the flu, you die, basically, And so, but if anybody else got anything, holler out.
When you talk about the man who dug into the cavern down, where is that he was able to enter? Because
Okay, it's just below Wright's Peak.
Okay, is that like the bottom of the mountain?
No, it's right near the top.
Oh, he was near, okay.
No, it's right near the top.
That's
Yeah, it's right near Wright's Peak.
On the north side, east or west?
I don't know exactly where it's at, because they don't like to tell you where it's at. They don't want people in there. Because they closed it up afterwards, see. And I'd like to see them open some of them up again.
I want to say about the Fowler family. They were doing tours up there, and they were wonderful. The lady,
oh, okay. Mary
Mrs.
Fowler.
It must have been Mary, but anyway, she was giving, and then we saw the cave, or the one that they filled in, because they had to have the Fowler's permission
Okay.
to do it.
Yeah.
And actually, the problem with the buses and everything was it went right by where they were living.
Yes,
And so
yeah,
they had
when it
to
first leaves the
detour.
parking lot.
Right,
so-
and
it
then,
goes by.
and then
But-
they said, okay, detour it, and so the county detoured it, and I thought that was working out.
No, what happened there was they wanted, I was told, like $500,000 more to allow access on that road.
No.
Okay.
And so that killed that, but now, I can't, the one Fowler man lived there with a friend, and
Okay.
she moved away and moved to Oregon, and I don't think anybody lives in that house now
Oh,
at all.
Oh, wow.
Out there.
yeah, because they had a really nice house.
Oh, yeah,
that they were
beautiful, I've
doing.
been in the house.
Right.
And it's nice home, yeah,
Right.
but I don't think anybody lives there.
Well, we're really thankful that Terry came and shared his
Yes.
history, his understanding, and his love of Lake County nature. Yes.
Make a comment.
Yes,
which
Barbara.
I probably should, but Tom Johnson, I mentioned this man, 75-year reunion at Lakeport.
Yeah.
He graduated 75 years ago at Lower Lake.
Oh, wow, that's neat, yeah.
Yes. George Robinson.
And he, as far as we can find out, he is the only person left.
How big was your graduating class? Do you remember?
Oh, there was about 20.
20? Okay.
Yeah.
Don Ellis.
Don
Thomas
Ellis,
Supervisor.
the Voices, Buddy Boys, that class there.
Wow.
And I graduated with that
My
class.
goodness.
Was there a hummus in that class?
Who?
Hummus?
Hummus? No, I don't think there was a hummus. Absolutely no. There was a George Little, Frank Miles, on and on. The Ellis, Pat Riker, Elaine Cookoven.
Oh, Eileen Cook.
Elaine.
Oh, Elaine.
The one that
Elaine.
passed away.
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
Yeah.
Elaine.
And I don't know who is left but me. I don't know.
Wow.
I haven't,
So you'd have a reunion of one, actually.
We can have a reunion for you right here and now. Yay! Well, go ahead. Oh.
You've seen tremendous changes in Lake County then in your lifetime here, haven't you? You've seen tremendous changes in Lake County in your lifetime.
well, I was born in Far Lake in 1923.
Okay.
Wow.
But I worked in the Bay Area until '64. Then I came back up here.
Yes, wonderful.
That's fantastic.
Well, thank you for joining us. And next month, we're going to have David Neff, who is normally known as a musician, but next month, he is going to be talking about real estate values and the changes that have happened in property values here. So we look forward to your visiting. And Middletown began something very new last night. The Gibson Museum was open from 4 to 8 p.m. with the first Friday walking tours. So we had an artist here last night who was a guitarist, and she was magnificent. And if you go to our Facebook page, you can see some of her music. But next month, invite any children that you know, because one of the things we're going to be doing on First Friday is making corn cob dolls. And we will possibly have some displayed photography as well from another artist. And so we're looking for other artists to be involved in this program. First Friday walking tours in Middletown.
I went to that forest, as you know, because I was here.
Yes.
And I didn't go to a lot of shops because it was a little bit cool. So, but I want to
Toasty.
say it was really fun. Everywhere I went, there was something interesting, and I encourage people to go to the First Friday.
First Fridays in Middletown. Very good. And if you are not a member of the Friends of the Gibson Museum, please consider becoming a member. It's very reasonably priced, and you're supporting our continuing offering wonderful programs here. Oh, I will definitely give you one. There you are. Thank you. Thank you. And there are refreshments in the back,
In the back, please.
thanks to Janet.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank